This is the latest edition of Front Up, and I'm Whitey Willauer, and I've got a great guest today, Allen Reinhard. Allen, you are always involved in a multitude of things, but I gather you've got a special event coming up in next week or the week after, the 23rd?
23rd, right, Monday the 23rd.
And what is that?
This is the Nantucket Civic League, and the Civic League is doing a volunteer appreciation event on the 23rd. It's going to be from 4:30 to 6:30 at the Legion Hall on Monday the 23rd. And the whole purpose of this, the Civic League is trying to get people involved in local government. This is part of our mission, is to encourage citizen participation in local government. And as we were looking through the annual town meeting report, we noticed all these committees. There are 11 elected boards, committees, and commissions, and in addition, there are over 40 different appointed boards, committees, and commissions, and so on. So I was sitting there counting up the different boards and how many there were. And of course, I've been involved for some time, and this came as a surprise to me. So I counted up the names, how many people served in all of these different boards, committees, commissions, and so on. There are about 315 to 300, depending on where you count. These are all volunteers. These are all people who step forward.
You don't have anybody gets paid?
Well, we considered the Board of Selectmen. Now, the Board of Selectmen, of course, get a stipend. That's not a salary. No, it's not. It's different. When the $3,500 came about, it was a recognition of the fact that as a selectman, you put in a ton of time for gas and paper and copier and all the different stuff that goes there. So it was deemed as a stipend. I mean, if they worked it out on an hourly basis, it would work out to what, 5-7 cents an hour or something like
probably,
that. But so anyway, the Civic League, and I should back up just a moment. I took over as president this year. I've been on the board of the Civic League since about the middle 1990s, and when I took over as president this year, I was looking ahead to what are we going to do? We do a series of programs over the course of the year. This January, for example, we did the downtown forum that we held at the African Meeting House. We do meet the candidates, meet the articles, 2 of our signature events, and we'll be doing a mosquito forum coming up in May.
How about a tick forum? Are you going to do that?
We did that 2 years ago, and over the years we've done a number of things. We've been involved with the landfill. In looking ahead to this year, in recognizing all the volunteers that serve the town, I broached to the board the idea of doing a volunteer appreciation event somehow. How are we going to recognize?
4:30 to 6:30?
4:30 to 6:30.
And is the bar open?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to...
It's a cash bar?
Well, no. We're going to... This is the Civic League. We're going to provide beer and wine. We'll also have water and carbonated drinks as well. We'll have some food, some little nibbly, sort of things to go.
Will there be speeches, or what's going to happen?
It's primarily a social event. We wanted to bring attention on to all these boards, committees, and commissions. So that was one of the hardest things to do. How are we going to recognize these people? So I came up with the idea that maybe we could do sort of a sheet, list all the committees and who's on it, and we recognized that'd be a little cumbersome. We thought maybe something framed that people could take home and so on. We decided we're going to do a full-page ad in the Inquirer and Mirror next Thursday, and it will list all the boards, committees, and commissions. So the event itself will be primarily a social event, inviting people there. There'll be a short program, about 15 minutes or so, and I will say a few words of introduction as president of the Civic League. Rick Atherton will be there to speak as a member of the Board of Selectmen. and Olivia Gibson will be there to speak as well. We had invited Tim Madden, and Tim would very much like to be here, but it's the opening day of the budget hearings in Boston, so he's unavailable for that. So anyway, to get back to the event, the focus, of course, is to recognize there are approximately 280 some individuals, because some of us have different
double dipping.
Well, for example, yourself. I mean, you're a prime example. You serve as Board of Selectmen. You also serve on a number of other committees and have over the years. And this is exactly the kind of service that we're trying to recognize. Exactly. I mean, you're a good exemplar, just as Tim is. I mean, Tim, former land bank commissioner, selectman, and all the different things, moderator that he's filled in and so on. Part of the idea of holding an event like this is to make people in the community aware that these things don't just sort of happen. We just came through a town meeting and a vote for selectmen, and I think we all recognize how important government is in terms of the daily lives that go on here. And any of us that have been involved in the process understand that it doesn't just happen. There's a process. There's a very long process sometimes. And sometimes you advance the idea, sometimes the idea doesn't get advanced and so on. But it's the people who volunteer. It's the people who step forward and say, I'm interested in roads and right-of-way, or I'm interested in human services, or I'm interested in energy issues. So I'm going to step forward and volunteer for a committee. And it's at the committee level where a lot of these ideas come forward, and where the actual, if the implementation doesn't come up, the recommendations come up to the Board of Selectmen, and then they get implemented through town manager.
Now, I'm often disappointed that some of the committees are so hard to get members on the committees. How are you going to approach that to encourage younger people and people that are talented and such? Is there an effort by the Civic League to do that? And
yes.
How are you going to do that?
Well, this is always the problem. How do you bring up the next generation? This is something the Civic League has dealt with for the last 112 years now. And over the course of the Civic League's history, our first president, Dr. Gerard, who was the one who established the
Girardi or Gerard?
Gerard, G-R-O-U-O-D.
Yeah.
Dr. Gerard, just fascinating person. Served during the Civil War. He served in Washington, I believe it was during the Civil War. But was a doctor and came to Nantucket. He was the one who originated the Nantucket Cottage Hospital back when it was up on Kite Hill back in 1918 and so on. He was the first president of the Civic League. He served for 9 years, went on to serve an additional 13 years as vice president of the Civic League. So the question is, how do you bring in new blood to the organization? The way we try to do it within our own organization is by reaching out to people that we think would be good candidates. I was invited to join the board as an adjunct member back in the early 90s, having no idea really who the Civic League was, what they did, or anything like this. I think the town works the same way. Through advertising, the availability of these opportunities, or at least I like to think of them as opportunities for service. That's probably the main goal of the event that we're doing here. By the way, next year we're thinking of recognizing the volunteers who serve on all the nonprofits. For example, we, the Civic League, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. And there are, 146 at last count, different nonprofits. And many of them, again, do real service in terms of different aspects of the community. But we wanted to focus on what makes Nantucket the community that it is. What makes Nantucket a vital, interesting place to live. The Civic League is very much concerned with the quality of life, and by encouraging participation in local government, whether it's through volunteering on these committees, whether it's through the forums that we do, whether it's through the Town Government Study Committee. And you remember the Town Government Study Committee, I mean, you and I served on that. That was, I think, a very valuable committee. And when you look at the recommendations that we made there, in addition to the ones that went to town meeting as well for discussion as bylaw amendments and so on, there were 33 recommendations in that report for the Town Government Study Committee. And of those 33 recommendations that didn't need a warrant article to be implemented, 28 of those have already been implemented. Things like the PEG channel, things like the committees, the committee booklet, for example, that Libby puts out for all the new committee members. So, anyway, that's probably the roundabout answer to your question, but we hope through this event, through the ad in the newspaper, we hope that people will go down and see who's serving on these different committees. And maybe there'll be somebody out there, somebody young, idealistic, somebody like Toby Glidden, who will take a look at this and say, hey, I'm interested in X, Y, or Z, and I'm going to sign up for this committee.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to get Toby motivated, but he says he's got a full-time job.
Yeah.
So that's often a problem with the younger people.
It is. Yep.
And the other thing I often find is somebody will come up to me, I'd like to get involved. How do I get involved? And where should I get involved?
Right.
And it requires a little bit of coaching. And I don't know if you provide that kind of effort.
Well, you're talking kind of there about mentorship, and yes, that's the Civic League operates. There's a board. There's a group of worker bees. There are about 9 or 10 of us who meet every month, and we're the ones who work out the programs. Now we have a larger board, the presidents of all the 24 different area associations that we represent. Because remember, we're an umbrella organization for these different groups. And very often, if we see someone like Tobias, for example, who shows an interest in the community and so on, they're very often somebody who knows him, who's on the Civic League, will invite him to come on board. And I just use Tobias as an example. I mean, I'm not saying we've gone out and tried to get get him involved in this, but that's the kind of thing that we do.
Well, what I find is, I had one gentleman come up to me and said, I'd like to get involved. And I said, okay, what have you worked in?
Right.
And you go through a process, like an interview process, and you say, well, maybe you ought to get on the finance committee. And turned out he did, and then suddenly he became chairman of the finance committee. And I figured, that's the kind of mentoring that I feel is important.
Exactly.
And how do you orchestrate that from the Civic League?
Yeah, I don't think you do. I don't think there is a way to orchestrate it. That, I believe, the same person who was on the finance committee was also on a couple of my walks. I lead walks for the Conservation Foundation. And in the course of those walks, between stops, I get a chance to chat with people. And particularly when I was doing the winter walks, there were several members who are now serve on different committees who are on those walks. And they'll strike up a conversation. They've just moved here very often, just retired here to Nantucket. And they'll say, gee, what's there to do on the island? I said, well, what's your background? So I think it's the word of mouth. I think it's people such as yourself, people who are in these different positions, who meet other people. I don't think there is a way that you can orchestrate that kind of contact. I mean, it's just sort of a network.
And another thing I've done is look at the various committees and find out which ones have available spots.
Yeah.
And then you say, okay, now can we find somebody for that spot? And that requires a little bit of research, but and I think advertising works, but you have to tell them what's available. And people are afraid. Many people are afraid to go through the process because they don't like to be go through, let's say, an election process, or some of them would prefer an appointed process. So you have to get over that initial fear of being not selected.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that when we did the Town Government Study Committee, we debated appointed versus elected. And we recommended 3 different shifts in 3 different committees. And the arguments, it's not easy to run for elected position. I mean, you and I know that firsthand.
Sure.
It's expensive. You need to have people to, it's a big commitment doing elections. Particularly if you're running for, it's just a big commitment. The appointment process, I think one of the things that's since you've been on the Board of Selectmen, that's improved is the process where you actually bring the candidates in, you ask them questions and this sort of thing. And there is now a manual that the town manager has compiled that is given to new, I assume it's still given to all the new members as they come on. And basically it sort of explains what the function of the chairman is, taking the minutes and trying to make it a little easier, provide a little assistance to how the work of these committees should go forward.
One of the problems I see with the committees is how they're operated. In other words, you get into some committees and everybody's talking at once. And how you need to teach people, you've got to go through the chair, you've got to ask and move the process along, or they get mission creep and all sorts of things which make the committees inefficient. And that would be another thing that the Civic League could look into. How do you train people to be on a committee?
Leadership. I mean, what you're talking about is leadership. A good committee, a good effective committee, and that we have a number of them that operate, and we know we have some that are a little more lax, let's put it that way. It's all in who's the chair and the skills that the chair brings to the table. If you have someone who has background, let's say, who has some skills, who's done this in different positions, for example, they were a teacher, they were a business person, they ran whatever. One of the ways that we do this on Civic League is, again, we invite people to come in. If we see somebody who has an interest in what we're doing, we'll invite them to come in, sit with us, with our board, the worker bees that sit around the table and do all this planning. And over time, as we see people, we'll bring them in, and eventually, they'll either catch it, they'll get the bug, so to speak, and want to get involved, or not. But again, with careful screening, you can teach leadership, but it's that's a whole different.
Well, I remember I had a bright idea to teach various committees, and brought an expert in teaching this thing, and we got some people that really needed coaching that just sort of said, well, I know all of this, I'm not going to this.
Exactly.
So there's a need in the town to teach people what goes and what doesn't go.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I guess we're getting a signal. We've gone quite a while here. So anything more I should be asking you, except to come to the, what is it, 23rd?
Right, April 23rd, Monday, April 23rd, 4:30. And if you're a volunteer, if you're on serving on any of the committees, you're welcome to attend. We've got some buttons that we're going to pass out, and thank you for serving, and particularly all those people over the years, such as yourself, Whitey, who have served on
and it's free beer and free wine.
Free beer, free wine, and free food.
And how's the food?
Well, we'll see. I don't deal with the food. So.
I see. Yeah.
Great.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see everybody there on the 23rd of April. I won't be there. I'm going to be off island, but my heart will be there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Whitey. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.